What's up, guys? It's the day of truth. I can't really wait any longer. I could, but honestly, I'll probably just wind up going back and forth on it a million times. I decided the best thing to do a lot of times when you're indecisive about something is to reflect and just think back. So, I thought back and I did an entire Super Bowl saga. A lot of you guys have seen this particular video, but we have a lot of new people as well. So, I did put it on my community post. It's from several months ago. It's like week 5. But I don't listen back to my videos. There's too many of them and I know what I said, so there's no point. But in this case, and that's why they're never edited, otherwise I would have just edited this video into a new one. But in this case, I wanted to really see where my mind was at throughout the year. Because as you guys know, all year long, I've been so hot on the Niners. The AFC, I've admitted that there's a couple teams that I could have seen. Ravens were obviously in the front. And there was just different reasons. And in this video, it was just after I noticed a trend. And I feel like we just nailed so much in this particular video. And it's not just this one, but this one kind of encompasses everything that I thought we might see in the playoffs. And since it's, in my opinion, very over the target, I was going to play the first 10 minutes or so, and then, because that's really where we go into the Super Bowl and such, and then I kind of just start going into picks for other stuff. So I figured we would listen to it, and then I can elaborate on it just a little bit more. So here's here's past John, hoping to shed some light on what's going on. And like I said, we're just going to listen to like 10 minutes of this long video, and it goes into a lot of different things, but I don't want to make you guys listen to a really long video. So instead of me rambling for 30 minutes, I figured the first half we'll just listen to this for everyone who hasn't seen it, and then I'll elaborate on what and why I believe it will hold true. To go into a narrative that I feel like I'm starting to understand pretty clearly, and it's one that they're obviously just going full throttle with the Niners here. Now, I've done 2 videos so far. A preseason video, which I believe had the Niners. I know it had the Niners, and I believe it was the Ravens both going to the Super Bowl, had the Niners winning that. And then I made another video, and I think the Broncos, I kicked out the Broncos in favor of the Chiefs, who I conceded, okay, they're probably going to make the playoffs. And the NFC side, the only change was kicking out the Panthers back in week 3 in favor of the Falcons, because the Dion theory, I do think all of his teams will make the playoffs. So, looking around the league and what they're doing, I am seeing some serious WWE booking. In WWE, what they do is they push people, obviously, and they'll have them go over in very convincing ways. And some people they push, obviously, harder than others, and some are more blatant than others. What this 49ers team is reminding me of is the 2007 Patriots team, where they just ran roughshod through the league. There's no, like, outside of an injury, real or fake, and like I always cover them with wrestling logic, so there's just nothing, in my opinion, that would have this team looking weak or where another team is going to beat them. I'm not saying they're going to go undefeated, but they are far and away better than any team in the league. Now, you'd think that would strengthen my resolve in the Niners, because I've had them since last year. I had them doing it, and they didn't. I went into the Niners redemption story. So many guys like Debo, Fred Warner, he paid their dues. They are ready for a championship, and I have no doubt that they're going to get there. Now, at first, and I admittedly said in the AFC it was murky. Part of me thought the Ravens, part of me thought the Raiders. Both have a lot of symbolism with them this year. Also, what's interesting is somebody pointed out that I had the Niners winning the Super Bowl, doing really well this year. Meanwhile, I've yet to pick right on a Niners game, so I find that interesting. That stuff happens to me all the time. Same with Dion. We missed the first 3 weeks like terribly, but got all of his NFL teams. So we had the Dion theory, but we just couldn't figure out if he was going to win or lose. The last 2 weeks we've been on fire with Dion, so I think it's just a matter of again, understanding kind of where they're pushing these teams. I genuinely believe the Niners are going to the Super Bowl still. So that really leaves one possibility, in my opinion, for the AFC. Because if the Niners go, there's really nobody to match them. Like, I don't think, even if it's Niners Jacksonville, you got like an underdog story. And I talked about having first versus last, right? You'd have Trevor, first overall pick versus the last overall pick. It kind of sells itself, but it's not. It's going to remind me of like the Cardinals when they played the Steelers, even though the Cardinals won that game. It was just, people weren't that interested in that game because the Cardinals really weren't supposed to get there. And they don't do that often. So you can get Niners-Ravens, sure, a rematch. But the way these two teams look, is that going to be a draw? Right now, there's only one team, and you probably know where I might be getting at with this, that makes any sense to play the 49ers. And it's a pretty big concession on my part because, again, I had this team not making the playoffs. But if you really think about it, the very first week of the season, we had the Chiefs come out. I think I clicked on the wrong. Here we go. We had the Chiefs come out, and here's another prediction that's voting pretty well. I had the Vikings before the season started, and a bunch of people said I was crazy. I said they were going to have the worst record in the division, and it's looking like that might happen. Again, it was so, to me, when Vegas just puts the Lions as favorites out of nowhere, it just made me love the Lions. So we've been pretty darn accurate with most of our divisions. We have the Dolphins winning over the Bills, so that's looking pretty good. Although the Bills are looking pretty good, they obviously beat the Dolphins pretty bad. They so far have that tiebreak. I think that overall the Dolphins have had a more impressive reign, if you will, over the first 5 weeks. We've been doing pretty good with our AFC and NFC North. We kind of nailed. I still think it's going to be seed 1 Lions, seed 2 Packers, seed 3 Bears, seed 4 Vikings. Vikings get Caleb. That's just a theory. But anyway, Chiefs are clearly making the playoffs. And
what would you say if I told you I smoked mood cannabis with my dad?
Well, I'd say.
But anyway, Chiefs are clearly making the playoffs, and they have a very interesting rivalry. They have from 2-3 years ago, Tyreek Hill left. They talked about how Tua was better, and we never really got to see these two teams play. Last year, I loved it for the playoffs. I did, and they didn't wind up meeting up, and I thought that was odd. And this year, I think it's definitely going to happen because what's the narrative around Mahomes? The narrative is he doesn't have a receiver. He's Superman out there. And on the narrative for the Dolphins is Tyreek is a cheat code. Just close your eyes and bomb it down the field. He'll get to it. So very contrasting narratives, but also very, very interesting and appealing if they meet up against each other. And then, of course, the question will become who was more helpful. Did they need Hill? Or is Mahomes that good that he could be good with any group of receivers? Well, what happened with Tom Brady? There was never an instance where a receiver left, even Randy Moss, and he just started playing worse. No matter who they plugged in, that guy played better. Rasheed Caldwell, they did it with Welker, obviously. They did it with Edelman. They've done it with countless receivers. So that's what they're doing with Mahomes here. No matter who gets plugged in, they're going to be successful. So I have no doubt now that probably in the second round, it might be the first round, probably the second round, we're going to see the Miami Dolphins versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, if the Dolphins win, and let's just say they advance, win the championship, does Dolphins-Niners make sense? I don't think it does. You have some similarities. There's actually a Samoan connection because The Rock and like Roman Reigns, Reigns is technically from Florida. The Rock's technically from California, but he reps Miami, as does Reigns. But the Usos are from San Francisco. It's really interesting. Tua is obviously Samoan. The Rock has talked about how he's like a Samoan brother. So there is a small connection between, and I believe there's a Samoan player on San Francisco as well. I think he's like, they said he was basically like the protege of Palamalu. But anyway, you could see Miami, San Francisco, but I honestly believe at this point, especially because it's something Pat McAfee said toward the end of last season, when it was going to be the Chiefs-Eagles, he said, oh, the fans are all convinced that it's scripted now, and they're building a new dynasty for Patrick Mahomes. And we kind of knew that, but I thought, okay, then they'll have them take a year off, and then they'll get back to business. Since the way they started and the way they're looking and the way they're being portrayed, again, with Taylor Swift, that involvement's interesting. And the fact that it really is just Mahomes, Kelsey, and a couple other guys. I think they're pushing the Chiefs here, and what we're going to see is what they tried to push last year, but it was unsuccessful. Last year they tried to push the quote underdog Chiefs against the Eagles and say, "Oh man, the Chiefs, they got everything. They got an injured quarterback. Some players are banged up. It's gonna be Mahomes, against the MVP, the team that almost went undefeated." They really did a good job of trying to convince people that the Chiefs were underdogs when they obviously were not. Nobody is ever going to see the Chiefs as underdogs, just like nobody ever saw Brady as an underdog. But a good way to do that is what they can do with the Super Bowl. If we get, and I'm starting to believe this is where they're heading with it because it's the only thing that makes sense, the Chiefs versus an unstoppable 49ers team, then people will say, "Oh man, Mahomes is the best." Even if he doesn't win the game, if he's able to hang with this ridiculous team where he's going to be getting harassed the entire game and he's going to have to play Superman on so many plays, avoid Bosa, avoiding Warner, all these different guys that are being pushed as ridiculous superstars, and they are good players. But they're being treated, again, reminds me of the Legion of Boom. Just the way it's just like a known fact that this defense is going to clobber you. To me, Mahomes is the only guy that makes sense to go up against the Niners. And there's a little bit of tie-ins with Brady if you think about it. Mahomes' last Super Bowl, he just obviously won, but before that he played Brady in obviously 2020, I believe it was. Brady, diehard Niners fan growing up. Purdy is kind of being labeled as the new Brady because he was drafted late. But Mahomes is really the new Brady because he's the guy that the whole league is behind. So it's almost like Brady's two sons are going against each other. I guess Jimmy G would be like the redheaded stepchild in this situation, but it does make sense to me. Now, it's not first versus last, but it is Mr. Irrelevant versus the best quarterback in the NFL by a country mile. So it is still a narrative, and he could play. I thought about this as well. In the NFL division matchup, we can get Lions, Niners, so we could still get first versus last with Goff, or yeah, I think he'd be the only guy that would qualify right now. Trying to run through the NFC and see who makes sense. Dak wasn't on first overall, so I mean, I guess they could wind up starting Lance, and that would be an interesting story. But I think we might see Chiefs versus Lions, and not Lions, Niners versus Lions, and that would be a story for the Lions. At the beginning of the year, I said I thought they were going to go and make a run to the probably the NFC Championship. They really made sense to me. I really don't think they're going to represent the Super Bowl. I just don't see it this year. But looking at the AFC and being fair, the Jets, they could do something with them, but even if they do, and they're able to hang on, get in the playoffs with Rodgers just coming back, are they really going to sell us on this team is suddenly good enough to go toe-to-toe with the Niners? I don't think it's going to happen. The Chiefs, it makes sense. Now, they lost the first week of the season. They won a couple non-convincing games. The public is probably not loving the Chiefs like prior years, yet they're still a Vegas favorite. You'd think there'd be a lot of teams ahead of them. I would think there'd be like 3 teams ahead. I think people would be hammering up until this point, even though the Cowboys got hit pretty hard. The Niners, Eagles, and Cowboys probably all over the Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs have Mahomes, obviously, and they've looked fine. But again, they haven't played any crazy good teams. So it's interesting. Once we get to, they've talked about it before, you see once they get to about week 7, it starts getting a little bit tougher. But I also find it interesting they don't play the Niners this year. I get they're in different conferences, but they played once last year. They're obviously the 2 biggest draws in the NFL. It's interesting that they're not playing each other. They're playing the Eagles, so it makes me feel like that's going to be their grudge match. Eagles might win that game. But yeah, I think this is a perfect way to explain away how the Chiefs can be a team that can hang with the 49ers. And then wins, which at that point we'll see where we're at. If it does wind up being Chiefs-Niners, Mahomes won the first one. I have a feeling Niners would win. But if Mahomes won, it's an interesting story because you have an actual underdog where you can say, man, this guy, he's by far the best quarterback. He came out of nowhere, and not out of nowhere, but he had an ankle injury, and he got his team back to the Super Bowl and beat a decisively better team who basically has him beat in every metric: receivers, running back, defense, just everywhere. And I'm going to go into that. If you look at these stats, Chiefs are doing well this year, as you can see. 26 points, giving up 16. And I don't go into stats like because I don't think they mean anything. But when you see them like this, it's just evident that they're really trying to position the Niners as so much better than any other team. How much they're winning by. Again, the only thing that it gives me is 2007 Patriots vibes. So I really don't feel like at this point there's even if there's going to be money on the Niners, they're only getting 2 to 1 to win, and you can just see that's in one game. Sorry, they're only getting 2 to 1 to win the NFC Championship. So people might be taking them, but they're not going to hammer a future bet where you're only getting 2 to 1. Like so, even that makes me feel like they're probably going to wind up winning the NFC Championship still because it's not like they're getting 4.5 to 1 and Vegas is going to be paying out a lot of money. 2 to 1, you just need 50% of the people to take any other team, and Vegas is basically fine. So you look at these, how ridiculously superior the Niners look, averaging like 8 more points a game than the Chiefs, doing better on defense. I think the Chiefs' third down efficiency was slightly better. Look at the 6.66. I wonder if that's a coincidence for the fourth down. So it's just very interesting. And again, it's not even close. I mean, it reminds me of again, the Patriots when they got Moss. Only in this case, it's when the Niners got McCaffrey. So they're pushing this ridiculous streak, and the streak's interesting because I've gone into a million times how I think it's related to wrestling, and this WrestleMania is going to be in Philly. So it's an interesting thing because obviously the Niners' last loss, even though it was the only loss Purdy started technically, and they lost when he got hurt, was against Philly. So it's an interesting thing, and then obviously Brock is the one who ended the streak in wrestling. He ended Taker's streak. So it's an interesting commonality in my opinion. Now, if the Niners are going to go undefeated this year, I'm honestly wondering. I really am. Now they play the Browns this week, 5 point spread, so it's a little interesting. I think it might be a win. All right, guys. I didn't want you guys to have to listen too much, but that was basically where I cover. Because usually in all my videos I try and get picks out, so I wind up going into spreads and such. But the reason I wanted to go into that is because I could have just regurgitated everything and said I told you so, but I thought it'd be better for people that are new, people that hadn't seen before, exactly where my mindset was at that point, and basically all season how my mindset has been. I'm very much again a WWE booking type of guy, and there's a lot of things. The WWE thing I do think is connected. The Brock Lesnar thing, the streak. Paul Heyman's a Philly guy. Obviously, he's with the tribal chief Roman Reigns Chiefs. Roman Reigns from San Francisco. So is The Rock. But I don't want to get too sidetracked with all that. That's just basically the WWE stuff. But to touch on a few of the things, I mean, if you look at what we had happening this season, we basically nailed so many things. Some aren't relevant, like the Vikings finishing last. I know that. It just, I didn't want to skip over parts so people are thinking that I'm like editing out parts that didn't fit. I just ran the whole thing. Obviously, everything wasn't perfect, but we got the matchups in the playoffs we thought we'd get, and particularly with the Chiefs, we got like exactly what we thought we'd get, and with the Lions. I mean, we got the Lions now and playing, or not the Lions, the Niners and the Lions playing each other first versus last. Seemed obvious. Now this is before the logo went viral. As you can see, it's back in week 5. So I just find it very interesting. The reason I thought I would do it this way, it'd be cleaner if I could have edited, this part into a video, but unfortunately I'm just very, very old school that way. I don't know. It'd take me forever to edit it. So expounding on that, the major point that I took away was at this point in the season, but now, I mean, they continued it all season, is the Chiefs are being viewed as underdogs. They have been underdogs in each of these playoff matchups. And I wondered, okay, with Vegas, why are they making them underdogs? Why are they going to pay out the public? And now I think it's clear. Again, the lines are a psychological number. So now they can say the Chiefs, genuinely as underdogs, went on the road, beat all these guys, and that would establish Mahomes as this complete golden boy, whether they beat the Niners or not. And that's the only thing I could have seen. Because, again, preseason Niners Ravens. And I said a million times, even in the preseason, as far as the Ravens, I liked them because of the deaths, because of the sacrifices. Knew nothing of a logo at the time. That never even came into my mind. Actually, the logo's just been nothing but torture because it's kind of turned my theory on its head for different reasons. But anyway, I thought the deaths were an interesting story. But then, obviously, as the season progressed, they played each other. It was not a terrible game, but it was pretty much a mauling. And I believe it was on Christmas. I could be wrong. And on top of that, the Chiefs never played the Niners, and now they are pushing this Mahomes versus the world narrative. And you got Swift involved, and you have all these different things. And Mahomes recently said, he said it during after the Bills game. He said, I kind of like the feeling it's us versus everybody out there. Talking about when he's on the road. So to me now, just what makes the most sense, and again, it's as you can see, maybe I was in a zone back here, in week 5 because we really had a lot of what was going to happen covered. We didn't have it all perfect. Again, it's impossible to do that. But as far as where it seemed like they were heading, and obviously with the logo, whether that was the original goal or not, I don't know. I really don't think that logo was supposed to go viral. I don't think they would have snuck the first 2 years and not said a word, done it a third time, and then done it on purpose to wake people up. It just doesn't make sense. I think more likely people just noticed it because again the NFL doesn't give people enough credit, and a bunch of people online realized they put it out there, and it took months and months before the NFL started, and now right before the Super Bowl is when they're talking about it. That's the reason it's very interesting. So you know, to put Ravens Niners in our face after all that just makes absolutely no sense in my opinion. So with all that being said, Niners, they are still my team. As far as my pick, I said in the beginning of the year it would take a lot to budge me off the Niners. I am officially picking the Niners to beat the Lions. That's an official pick. Not going back on that. On the AFC side, I'm officially picking the Chiefs. I don't see why not. Uh, there's the Taylor Swift aspect, which again I've went through with people, and a lot of people that have great insight. Marco, just a lot of other people, Double P, have gone and we've discussed it, and we agree that the Chiefs Niners, while the people that know it's scripted will understand it's definitely okay part of a script, and this is so obviously set up. The all these the mass exodus or whatever you want to call them of people that are fans that are right on the fence ready to leave, they are subscribed 100% to the logo theory. So if that does not come true, then it's just going to be a case of the fans, the people that think it's real, completely outnumbering and ratioing the quote conspiracy theorist, and the people on the fence will probably stay there. And again, it's just because I don't think enough people are looking at these games the way we are. No, the first versus last, and the the Mahomes versus the world, all these different things. These people watched Brady and didn't question it. So they watch the NBA with players doing the same thing. They don't question it. So even though I think it's obviously scripted, and a lot of other people do, I don't think the average fan base is going to look at the Niners Ravens and think it's scripted. And again, with this underdog story, I don't see them just cutting it, off at the knees. So, the Ravens win. It's interesting. It's just, it gives us Ravens Lions would be the only one that would be like not look scripted from any angle. I just don't see that. And then the Ravens Niners again. If they gave us that, that would be crazy. It really would. It would be one of the best Uno reverses ever. But I just don't think they're gonna do that either. So I like the Chiefs to win, and I like the 49ers to win. That is my official pick. We get Mahomes versus the world, which is kind of what I thought they were gonna trying to give us. And then, like I said, they did all this logo nonsense, completely twisted my head like 15 times. They did such a good job on my noggin. We'll have to see if they did a good job or if we were able to 5D chess them. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think. Like I said, I didn't want you guys to have to listen to a video within a video. It was just the quickest way I thought I could go about doing this. And I thought adding that context would really help. Because I could say, oh, I thought this was going to happen. But I think it's best hearing it exactly when I noticed it happening. Because, again, I didn't even really know. I mean, I remember things I say, but I don't remember exactly how I said them and stats I was looking up when I said them and things like that. So yeah, first versus last is already happening, and that's a great story. We got Lamar versus Mahomes, and while Purdy versus Lamar, I did bring up that being interesting. He's not universally accepted as the GOAT, but the Mr. Irrelevant versus the GOAT is very. I shouldn't say GOAT, but as far as playing GOAT is such a big draw in my opinion, and it's such a polarizing aspect. And now you throw in, and this is just some new stuff, Jim Harbaugh going to the Chargers. So now you got Patrick Mahomes playing John. I'm sorry, Patrick Mahomes playing likely. Well, this week he's playing John, right? And then next, if he does go to the Super Bowl, which I think he'll do and play the Niners, he'll play Jim's old team. Jim's now in California on a different team, and then he'll be playing him twice next year. So it is very interesting. Another little commonality with the Niners here and Chiefs. So there's so much to it. Kittle and Kelsey is also something I can't ignore. I feel like getting them both on the field is something they want to do. And with the Swift Nation, again, that could be something to throw people off. And it could be the Ravens. But then again, that only leaves the Ravens Niners, which again would just wake so many people up. It would unnecessarily get people that aren't even sure about like that people that are saying, I think it's real. But if this logo thing comes true, then I'm going to change my mind. There's no way the NFL would do that. So then the only other option would be Ravens Lions, which I concede would be the least scripted, but they do want draws. You know, they don't want a boring, and in my opinion, that would be a boring Super Bowl. So, yeah, that's basically it. Like I said, I basically wanted to just retouch on everything and then kind of elaborate on what I was going over here, 3, 4 months ago. It was a little over 3 months ago when we were going into exactly what was happening and what we saw unfolding. So, yeah, I know I said it was not easy, but this video really did help me because and there's other videos that I can't listen to them all, but for the most part, I remember what I went over, and I remember vividly going over specific parts of the Niners, the Ravens, the Lions, and the Chiefs in this video. So that was the reason I thought this would be a good one for us to use as a template. And yeah, I think it's going to be Chiefs Niners. I don't have a winner yet, so I think the Chiefs are going to beat the Ravens. I think the Niners are going to beat the Lions. Now, the official picks, I mean, those are my official picks. Obviously, for the Chiefs, it's a money line, so nothing to worry about there. Niners, Lions, not positive if they're covering. So sometime, again, probably Friday or something, I'll cover because I want to look at the over-unders a little more. I'll cover the, if I think the Lions are going to cover. I'm sorry, not the Lions. Lions or Niners, who's going to cover that game, and the over-unders for these games. But as far as who is going to the Super Bowl, I've officially made up my mind. And maybe I did in week 5 and I just wasn't sure. But I believe it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. And again, it was one, again, from the beginning of the year, loved the Niners. And I just, not much is going to get me off them. As far as the Ravens, Chiefs, both very, very, again, back in week 5, those are the only two teams that made sense if you really think about it. So, not too much of a concession for me to say, even though ideally in the very beginning of the year, Ravens made sense. A couple weeks go by, Chiefs start making much more sense. A couple sacrifices. A lot of teams have had sacrifices. The Chiefs, on the other hand, have had a megastar. They've had a story where now, again, you have the tribal chief who is going to prove he's the greatest quarterback that is living, that's playing, I should say, because they can say, oh man, they tried it last year and it didn't work, and I think they want to run it again. Again, they were like, oh, nobody believed in us, and people were calling nonsense on that. This year, that would be the case, and people, they could say nobody believed in us. So yeah, I think that's what we get. Also, just too good of an opportunity not to have, again, not just Swift there, but if they win the AFC Championship, they do get a ring for that, I believe. I think that maybe they just get the pennant, but you think of the ring for Taylor Swift, you think of the ring for if they win the AFC Championship, it would be a pretty interesting dynamic. So I know some people are saying Chiefs Lions because of Eminem and Taylor Swift, but get that again. Now you're leaving the WWE kind of storytelling where it's not as it's more nuanced, and bringing in mega draws where it might open up some eyes of the fans. So I would argue Chiefs Lions might be more rigged looking than Chiefs Niners. And again, I just think it's going to be the Niners. I think Brock Purdy's story is going to continue. I think Brock Purdy is going to, prove the doubters wrong, as you would say, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, hopefully this wasn't like redundant. If you had seen this video already, I mean, if I remember too much. I imagine even the people that saw it probably don't remember too much. But I didn't want to go into the whole thing. The next 15 minutes, I talk about picks. I probably just elaborate on the same thing over and over. So I mean, again, I'll probably put the video in the link here. You can see which one it is. But I thought this would be a cool way, instead of again just rambling on about the exact same things I covered back in week 5, and not having a template and just saying, oh yeah, I said this in week 5, and I said this in week 5, and I said this. For new people, they might say, okay, I believe that, So anyone that's new, you can kind of see where my mind was, where it's at now, and hopefully for the people that have been following, you can guide me in the chat, because a lot of people, Marco, obviously, Double P, Shane, there are so many people, in the comments that bring up very insightful things. Chris, Johnny K, and it makes it where we can look at it from a very Trey. Sometimes I see Trey. Sometimes I don't. He's usually here. He usually comments, and Trey has some very interesting. We're usually aligned as well. But honestly, you guys, we're gonna help each other here, because I feel like it is a think tank, and I genuinely believe, like, reading the comments and ruling things out and just kind of using all of our mind power is so much better than just one person making a pick. So yeah, I thought this was interesting just because it happened to cover really all of the teams that are relevant this week. And again, I just think Mahomes versus the world makes sense, especially after he said, oh, it's like us versus everybody, when he was playing the Bills. I thought that was a very interesting, and it was after the game. He was talking about just being in the playoffs on the road. Then he mentioned the Bucks playoffs, and again, the Bucks connection is interesting. It's in Vegas. There's Jimmy G, and then you got Brady's two sons, right, Purdy and Mahomes. So it's all really interesting in my opinion. Then I believe they said Brady at some point was a consultant for the Raiders or something like that. So the whole thing is very, in my opinion, connected. So let me know what you think. Again, Chiefs Niners. I finally am making it official. I guess something could change, but no, I don't think that's happening. I think we're sticking with it, and we'll be doing a live stream on Sunday. So I think it's going to be the best one yet, as far as just raucousness, and well, it's never raucous, but as far as just subject matter, we'll be talking about a lot of things, and just positive vibes, fun. It's going to be one heck of a game. So we could do it Sunday. We can do it whenever you guys want. I imagine you want to do it on Sunday, and we could do it for the first game. That will be I believe, the Chiefs game. Chiefs Ravens. So it's going to be interesting, and I think we had it nailed back in the middle of the season. Again, the Niners just seem to be a lock all year. They just made sense all year. And on the AFC side, it really Ravens, Chiefs. Beginning of the year, Raiders were a team that I had in mind, and I guess we can argue the Raiders are playing a role. It's their stadium, but no, I saw they weren't doing much with them, and it was around this time. We always reassess, and this is when I started looking at the Chiefs, a team that I thought wasn't even going to make the playoffs, and I'm like, this Mahomes push just seems so weird, and that was the reason I decided Mahomes versus the world makes sense. You are talking one All Star versus like 10 All Stars if you don't count Mahomes. So again, he will be a complete underdog, and the only thing that has me a little trepidatious is this line. Are they really going to pay me plus 180 or whatever it is? Now, I do have the fortune of I did get that future with the Ravens and Niners a while back, like preseason. So I do, I can hedge that. I know a lot of other people who can too. But I think either way, the Chiefs look safe. I really do. I think, again, just by making them, you see it all the time where they'll have teams, dogs win, and they'll say, oh, this is the first team to win, as a 3 or 4 point dog. They even showed how Mahomes is 8-2 as an underdog. So I think they continue that. And yeah, to me, it just makes perfect sense. So I didn't want this to be too long. Like I said, I figured that half the video would be just going over everything that I went over in this video from a while back, just for most of the people that probably didn't see the video or might not remember all of it, what we had, and then the other half expounding on it and going over a few new things that I noticed. Like The Rock returning is interesting. He is from San Francisco, and Roman Reigns he's from Florida, but like basically lived in San Francisco. The Usos, basically the entire bloodline from San Francisco, and you know about the tribal chief, right? That's Patrick Mahomes, and that's also Roman Reigns. So I do believe wrestling plays a ginormous factor in all of it, and you just look at Pat McAfee, and that's again he toward the end of last year he went into that. Oh, people think it's going to be a dynasty for Mahomes, and last thing, I don't know how I forgot this. Again, this is why I wanted to kind of handle it in two sections. They conveniently have, and all year long they've showed lousy officiating, and fans will easily buy rigs throwing or referees rigging games. So if referees look terrible, most people aren't going to come out and say, "Oh man, how scripted." They're going to say that if there's a bunch of ridiculous plays, like teams selling bad. But if the referees step in, then it's a different story. And what are we looking at? We're looking at the Ravens, where apparently in that game the referees are terrible to home teams. Like they get the head officiating. I don't know who it is, but the head official has like the lowest amount of calls for the home team or something like that. In favor of the home team for penalties. And for the Lions, it's just a case of the referee has screwed the Lions and been really bad to the Lions. So now you can easily explain this away. Horrible officiating. The logo's completely forgotten. Everyone's focused on the refs. And then the next day, because the most NFL fans have the attention span of gnats, thinking about Taylor Swift and all these different things, and not really thinking about the script, the logo, bam, that debunks it. Of course, that's only going to work for about 5 days until people realize, okay, that doesn't really debunk anything. But the NFL gets what it needs, gets a draw, gets the ratings, gets their golden boy in there. They might as well give him his two now that he's in there. I still am sticking by they will be missing the playoffs in the near future. Nobody's just going to keep going. But I think it all makes sense. So I don't want to take too long to go over this, but since, again, half of it was I kind of needed to show you guys so you had an idea of where I was and where I am now, I figured, and especially since this is our official picks, it makes sense that we're going to go into it in depth. So yeah, I'll still put out videos for props, over under, stuff like that, covers. Again, the Chiefs isn't going to be a cover, but we can go into just the best, plays as far as units and stuff like that. But hopefully, I figured for the people that were waiting, I'm sure you guys were waiting on bated breath for my Nostradamus-like prediction. But no, I thought for the people that were waiting on a pick, we got them. My official pick is the Chiefs Niners now, and I just feel like it has the most credence of all the theories. So take care and happy earnings.